Hi, everyone. I'm Stefan Magdalinsky. I'm your moderator for this next session. I want to thank Rich Van Dyson. Did I say that correctly? Dyson? Yes.
Sure.
And Stefan Vevet for joining me on this panel. Where we're going to talk about the experiences of um, some onboarding platforms and how the clients are doing. Um, I guess I want to start by giving you guys an opportunity to sort of introduce yourselves, introduce your companies, and tell us a little bit about your history with the Filecoin ecosystem. Rich, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Stefan, and appreciate the opportunity. I'm Rich Van Dyson. I'm the founder and CEO at Clear Sky Technology Partners. I've been doing this for a long time. I've lost all my hair, obviously, as a result of 35 plus years in this business. Clear Sky is mainly focused on providing, easy to consume services and solutions for the enterprise and the managed service provider marketplaces. And we've really taken an approach that is a gap selling one where we align primarily a lot of the governance, storage, and recovery aspects of what that means end to end. And from a Filecoin perspective, I've been engaged in the ecosystem since January of 2023 as a result of, at the time, were the ESPA programs. And that journey has been extremely valuable to me in the form of being able to engage with the community, engage with the storage providers, as well as organizations such as Protocol Labs and the Filecoin Foundation. And it's really given us an understanding to kind of revamp the way we go to market to bring really cool technologies and blockchain type services like Filecoin to an enterprise customer or a managed service provider. And we primarily are doing that in a way by bridging Web 2 and Web 3 technologies together with an enterprise grade front end, if you will, or UI. So excited about that alignment to date and prepared to bring Filecoin as a service to enterprise customers.
Fantastic, thank you. Stefan, tell us about yourself and Akave.
Yeah, been in the Falcon ecosystem for over 4 years. Worked at Protocol Labs, was head of network growth, helped build out the Falcon network, and since last year, started our own business called Akave, as you can see. Akave is a storage and data layer for enterprises. We basically help customers to bring their data sets on chain, and we do that by building an S3 compatible API because what we have learned the hard way is that you have to meet customers where they are. And a lot of customers are still operating in the cloud and are still communicating over S3 compatible interfaces or object interfaces because their applications speak that language. And what we have built is a decentralized object storage interface that can help customers move data into the Filecoin network. And so through our stack, we are able to integrate much easier, much easier. It's a lot easier for customers to just take their existing applications, point it to an Akave endpoint, and through the Akave stack, store data on Akave and Filecoin. And a perfect example of that is our integration with Snowflake, which is a multi-billion dollar SaaS company that offers data analytics tools. And that's one of many applications that we're going to integrate that will open up a much bigger TAM for the Falcon ecosystem.
Cool. I'm going to come back to you, Stefan, and tell us more about that Snowflake integration if you can.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so if you look at the last, I mean, Akave is not even a year old, but one of our first customers that came in through the work we did with vStore and the Filecoin Foundation was a customer that wanted to move data out of the cloud for multiple reasons. They're storing data in AWS, and they're realizing that as they are using their data more often, that the cost of using the data and sharing the data out specifically to external compute resources is very expensive. And the main reason why it's so expensive is because there are these artificial walls that are created by these cloud providers to hold the data in the cloud because they know that data gravity is real, meaning if there's more data stored in a certain location, more data will attract other data basically. So the more data you keep in the cloud, the more data will end up in the cloud essentially. And by creating these high egress costs or data walls, as we call them, users have a very hard time to move data in a cost-efficient way to those new compute resources. And so this is a customer that is doing data analytics. They're using AWS, and they wanted to reduce their cost. But not only that, they wanted to be free and have the freedom to choose other potential compute offerings as they negotiated better terms, and also as you're seeing a lot more compute farms popping up. Look at CoreWeave. There's Scott's data center. I mean, there's or Scott's. I forgot what the exact name is, but tons of new compute farms are popping up that have access to H200s and H100s. And so what you're seeing is sort of like a transition back from, and not completely, from the cloud into more customized on-prem or customized SaaS offerings that are not bound by these limitations. And so in that journey, the customer asked us, "Hey, I would love to use a copy. I would love to take advantage of the decentralized benefits, and that includes cost, freedom, and data privacy, and so on. But you have to qualify with Snowflake." And so that's how our journey started. And then we started working with the Snowflake product management team. And by the way, this is not something you can just decide to do one day. It's not like you can just knock on Snowflake's door and say, "Oh, I'm here. I'm this cool new technology. Can you please help me certify?" No, you actually have to have a customer. You have to have a pull from a customer, not just like have a customer. The customer has to actively vouch for you, and that's exactly what happened here. And so today we are the first and only decentralized stack that is qualified with Snowflake. So now any Snowflake customer can still can connect basically their Snowflake instance to an Akave endpoint, can manage their data remotely, store it in Akave, and still use the compute resources from Snowflake to run analytics. And the savings for the customer are huge because they can save up to 80%, and they still have the freedom to, select other compute solutions if they want to.
That sounds that sounds great. I love this phrase, data gravity. I've often talked about like when we talk about egress costs and the data is really heavy. Like when we remember some of the experiments we did. Actually, well, it's still the case that sometimes the easiest way to ship a large amount of data is to put it in a van, and people talk about that. Data being heavy is sort of my naive pre-Newtonian version of what's actually going on, which is data gravity, which incorporates this idea that like if you've got a large amount of data somewhere, it will suck in other related data sets. It's actually it is like a sort of a better analogy, in fact. Um, uh, Rich, I'd like to jump to you. You both going after the enterprise. I think you're coming at clients with quite different approaches. How do you find clients, and what are they looking for in Filecoin?
Oh, great. Well, there's a lot of ways that we go about it, and a lot of it's not going to be shocking, but it is important to really be very good at what I'm about to say. So existing relationships are key. So if you've been around and you have good relationships, there's an awful lot of business from a credible standpoint, where you can leverage those relationships. We also participate, build, and generate multi-channel strategies around how to go to market and what those capabilities are. Those are generally vertical based. A lot of the what I'll call typical services, I don't want to say rinse and repeat because they are kind of customized to an organization, but layers of capabilities are on top of that by vertical, right? So if you're talking about a healthcare industry or something along those lines, would be a different strategy than obviously the automotive industry. Lead generation, it's no secret there. Lead generation is extremely important. And then what we really lean on heavily is building a community of partners and referral programs where we execute and build those programs collaboratively, in a form of what we refer to as solution selling. So everything we do is solution based, which Akave and Clear Sky come at it differently but complementary in the sense that when you look at an end-to-end solution, there's a lot of complexity on the back end that companies like Akave are providing that we can consume that technology where the customer may never even know who Akave is in some instances. And in some other cases, there is a co-sale and a co-branded approach to the marketplace. So I'll park it there. There's a lot to say under each
Okay.
of those umbrellas, but that's how we go about it.
Yeah. Stefan, how do you find clients? What's like your best source
Yeah.
at the moment or options for those?
Yeah, so today we have they have multiple partners in the Filecoin ecosystem that are very supportive in helping us find deals. So that's Filecoin Foundation, Onsa Research, and others. We have referral programs in place as well with partners that get sort of like a referral fee for finding opportunities. Next is we would like to explore also managed service providers because we know that those eventually are getting squeezed by some of the cloud providers, definitely when it comes to reselling some of their services. There's very little margin. So there's a lot of upside there for us to go after that market. Definitely now that with AI, we are seeing more opportunity with these new workloads to differentiate because there's a heavy integration component to that. And so I think there's an opportunity for the whole ecosystem to see if there's more opportunities to design Agave Filecoin into these new architectures, specifically AI architectures. What we're seeing is that customers don't necessarily move all their data sets out of the cloud. They're more interested in moving or designing their new AI workloads with a new architecture, and then look at how can I move some of my data sets that I'm using in these workloads to outside of the cloud versus, sort of like starting from scratch on all their use cases. So I think those integrators, those MSPs that are focusing on these workloads, and there are a ton of them now that are trying to differentiate in these new workloads, those are going to be good targets as well for us to go after because those are the ones that are typically more willing to take a risk or just like are ahead of the curve and see value in the verifiability, the immutability, the scale, and the data privacy that we can offer with decentralized infrastructure. So yeah, that's kind of the next wave. We also do some direct outreach, still limited just because of the team is very small. So most of our focus is on building. And our goal is also to, because we have so many people coming to our website, is to start building out a CRM that will help us with the direct outreach to connect with those people where they are, because we know that as we're going after more businesses, paid customers, enterprise customers, they just live in a different bubble. They're not on Twitter as much or on X. They're on LinkedIn. They're in different conferences, so you have to reach them, and they're typically more accessible through emails and so that's why we're building out more direct outreach to reach those customers as well.
Hmm. Okay. Interesting. Following from that, like kind of leads into my next question, which is uh, for both of you have been like in the decentralized storage or in the storage space for quite a long time. Have you seen or how have you seen sort of perceptions and comments about decentralized storage technology changing over time? Like, are the questions that clients ask different now, or are they more receptive, or how has that evolved?
I mean, I'll take this. I would say like 2 years ago, we talked to a few MSPs. Actually, yeah, it was a little bit over 3 years now. 3 years. 3 years ago, we talked to a few MSPs when I was at Protocol Labs, and as soon as you started bringing up crypto or blockchain, even it was it was not we didn't get a good response in the Web2 world, right? Today that is different. Actually, today there's a lot more appreciation for a new type of technology that um, we're and the way we see that is users are actually asking us what are the benefits. But it's also we are approaching the customers now with a solution, right? So it's a little bit easier because when you go to a customer and you can say, hey, we have an S3 compatible API, we provide a lower cost structure, plus it's more secure because you control your assets, you control actually your accounts through setting your own encryption key, and you have your own data wallets. Some people are still like a little bit apprehensive, but as soon as they see the value, the benefits, it's a lot easier to have that conversation. And second, I think the belief system has changed in the sense that it's not a people are not as skeptical anymore. There's more curiosity now, which is great because the curiosity is leads to an opportunity for us to educate them on how, beneficial this could be. And there's a couple of things that, have happened in the last 3 years that kind of contributed to this. Typically not positive things, but people are just a lot more aware about their IP and their digital twin, and their footprint that they're leaving behind on the internet or online, and that's being monetized. And right now, there's a lot more conversations around how can I ensure that my data is not being used in these new AI, in these smart agents, and
Yeah.
so there's a lot more of that conversation, even though it's
Yeah.
it's not necessarily
Ri-
tangible right away for them. They just the
yeah.
cost is typically driving them.
Yeah. Richard, have you seen things change over the years?
Yeah, from my perspective, I really divide that into two different, very huge marketplaces. There's the marketplace on the technology side that we're referring to with service providers, storage providers, managed storage services. And that marketplace, to Stefan's point, has come around a little bit, right? They understand the blockchain technology a little bit better than maybe an enterprise a customer would. So when we talk about Filecoin, I always put the 2.5 hat on, because there is a need to if you want to pay deal on the Filecoin ecosystem, you've got to actually, there's many sales techniques, but the two, having bought and run large budgets for over 30 years, there are really two key principles that I think need to be brought to the foreground. And those are, you have to solve a problem, and there needs to be value, and people will find ways to pay for both of those. So Filecoin's an easy one when you're positioning the value better, faster, cheaper, an enhanced way to store and recover data with some of the things that Stefan just alluded to. But when we position it and really tackle the perception piece of this, when we talk about it with customers as an alternative to hyperscalers or cloud storage providers, and the scalability that decentralized storage services bring to the table, that's where it gets complicated for a lot of reasons. And one of the main one being it's too complex, right? It's very complicated today for somebody in the public sector or the enterprise sector to put their eggs into what they still view as a public blockchain, even though we all know that the cryptographic hashes and being able to reclaim control and ownership of your data is a tremendous value, right? Especially with corporate audits and compliance activities. The data retrieval and lack of understanding around those costs are not very clear, right? We go to market saying price per terabyte and these type of things, but at the end of the day, it's about the total cost of ownership and the return on that investment underneath that data. So there's infrastructure, there's contracts, there's consolidation programs, there's migrations, and everything that goes along with moving a large data set to a new technology such as Filecoin. So for us, the other major issue is the skills, the talent, and the labor pool. A lot of that real good technology and capabilities are in this ecosystem, the Web3 ecosystem, the engineers, et cetera. But the target hasn't traditionally been the customer or the storage provider. And I think bridging that gap to make that easy to bring Filecoin as a service forward is the perception problem from what we see, at least on an anecdotal side. There's a lot of factual stuff out there. And I'll give you an example or two just to wrap up the point. Using your data archive for audits or improving your cyber insurance policy as an example is something that's not talked about when we talk about Filecoin. But it could provide tremendous value to any enterprise customer or any MSP that offers those services. How to better manage the growth, your risk, and your economics around those type of those factors. And just to kind of get it all out here really quick, because I do want to respect the time. Training, education, Web3 challenges. Nobody gets fired for purchasing mainstream products, right? So if I purchase AWS and I want to move to Google, yes, there's some issues. Maybe there's some complications there, but I'm generally not at risk per se because one provider maybe didn't do the job. But if you introduce a new shiny toy like Filecoin, people are a little reluctant to bring that as a forward-thinking strategy. So that's why we take the Web 2.5 approach and look forward to working with the ecosystem and Akavi and companies like that to create a nice little UI that we can easily connect to the back end and eliminate that complexity, if you will, and then provide more community-like services. But long answer,
Yeah.
but it's a hard topic.
Yeah, no, it is a hard topic. I also like that comment about I remember I'm old enough to be around the days when that phrase used to be no one ever got fired for buying IBM.
Or
But
Cisco.
in my world, we used to say no one ever got fired for buying IBM, but they never got a job at a startup. So it's sort of some of that the cyber risk and insurance side sort of leads me into a regulatory question that I'm wondering whether either two of you seeing or have any thoughts on, which is, have you seen any like data sovereignty issues coming up with clients? And some of that is sort of, there are some countries which are just like, nope, if you want to do business here, you've got to host this data set here. I'm in one right now here in Korea. But also sort of geopolitical impacts, or is that kind of regional geodata issues becoming more significant, or how
Yeah.
is it impacting you?
Yeah, geofencing is definitely a requirement. And it's not just a European thing, we've seen it in Asia as well, even in Thailand, where it is a hard requirement to keep the data within country. China has the same requirement. So it definitely is like an opportunity for the network to build more localized, specialized services. And so we've already seen the interest from some providers to run subnet, because in Akave, our goal is to create networking effects by allowing subnet providers to run a zone, quote unquote, which is if you look at AWS or Google or Amazon or Microsoft, you have different regions that you can choose from, or different zones. And so we believe that the same is required to support customers in the enterprise space in a decentralized environment. And that allows also to create these networking effects, because if those managed service providers that we know of today in the Web2 world currently can bring their customers to the network and can also offer a service as part of the network, not just reselling the service, but actually actively participating by providing S3 gateway services, by maybe even adding compute to it. That's how we see that problem being more addressed. The other thing we're seeing from data sovereignty perspective is like Hearst AI is storing LLMs on Akave, and their requirement was we need to ensure that the data integrity is maintained, and we need an on-chain proof, not only for the LLMs, but for the weights that were used to train the LLMs. And so that's why we are more specifically focused to go after AI workloads. Snowflake, by the way, started as a data analytics company, but all their messaging right now is about AI, right? And they're going after the MLOps stakeholders. Instead of DevOps, you have MLOps right now, and these MLOps people, they care about not just the cost, but also how do I guarantee my data is not changed, is stored immutable. And that's where we think we believe that decentralized solutions bring added value beyond cost savings.
Yeah. Richard?
Yeah, I think it's a two-headed monster. I think on the enterprise side and the business side of things, it's a very fluid and early initiatives around the globe, especially as we start talking about some of these larger data sets and AI models and things of that nature. There's no shortage of that in the news. So I think as we look at these things at an industry level, organizational level, a regional level, a state level, I think these regulations and policies are going to really drive some challenges, especially around sovereignty, because that infrastructure, those L2s are not really there, right? They're not really there. They're there in the centralized hyperscaler world, but as we know, it's a very complicated environment to get data out of, or to move it, or to put it in a regulated or sovereignty environment. So from that perspective, I think we're going to have to it's a speed and agility approach for us in this space to adapt and leverage orchestration technologies to shift that same concept to the back end to try to accomplish things like what Akavi's doing. That is a tall order. And I think the ability to do distribution initially of that data, or data gravity, if we want to look at it that way, is an extremely important capability over the next couple of years. So whether you're storing that data on-prem, off-prem, in a cloud environment, or even in a decentralized one, based on some regulatory rule that we maybe don't know of yet, or some policy, that data is going to need to be moved. So I do believe that distribution is going to be key for a few years. But to the point, yeah, we need edge compute and workloads to be satisfied in a very different way that aligns with, I'll just say, compliance-ready storage is the way I look at it.
Yeah, cool. I'm aware that actually we've been time is catching up on us. I did want to ask one last question, because I would be very remiss if I didn't do some dog fooding in every session. So for each of you, what's the biggest pain point you would like to see addressed in the Filecoin ecosystem next? Can be anything.
Yeah, I mean, what I would love to see.
But you get 30 seconds.
Well, I would love to see Filecoin rewards going towards PDP.
Okay, Richard?
I'd like to, and excuse myself if this is happening already and I'm not aware, but I would love to see the Filecoin community and the technologies better align or target the enterprise and the service provider with some end-to-end types capabilities, or realigning the engineering efforts with real paid deals and closing that gap, and providing product development around actual deals that move the needle in growing the network. Today, and I don't mean this in a derogatory sense at all, but today, at least my experience, is a great thing, but the target's been the developer, and that's a good thing. But now, how do we take that great work from those engineers and those developers and commercialize it? How do we make it readily available for easy consumption and easy purchasing? That's still a very big challenge.